With Open App Guide training, you've already learned how to install WordPress, Joomla, and Moodle on a Scala virtual private server. Now I'm going to show you how to register for a domain name and get that domain name to point to your hosting service. We're going to cover authoritative servers, DNS resolvers, and your hosting's name server, and why you should always use a dedicated hosting provider for your hosting and always register your domain name with a dedicated domain registrar. We have a lot to get to, so let's get going. When you set up your hosting account, your hosting server has an IP address. This IP address, which is a series of numbers, is the location and the name of your server on the internet. And because it's not super great to hand out a bunch of numbers to people so that they can find your website, because no one's going to remember that, you're going to want to get a domain name, which is a really easy way for people to remember your site. The goal is for people to put in your memorable domain name in a web browser, and that domain name gets translated to an IP address and then routed to your hosting server. To make this happen, you need to register a domain with a domain registrar who puts your domain name and your server IP address on their DNS or domain name system authoritative server. These servers list all the domain names that have been registered with them. Then all around the world, tens of thousands of DNS resolvers will update their cached records by asking the authoritative server. These DNS resolvers kind of act like phone books for the internet. They're going to keep a record of how people can find your website. After your domain name has been propagated out to the world, people can put in your domain name in a browser, pick up the location from the DNS resolver, and then get routed to your hosting server. Registering your domain name and that domain registrar putting your domain name on their authoritative server can actually be pretty fast. It can be anywhere from a couple of minutes to a couple of hours. What takes some time is the propagation of your domain name and hosting IP address to the tens of thousands of DNS resolvers worldwide. This can actually take up to 24 to 48 hours. While you're waiting for this propagation to happen, it's nice if your hosting service allows you to work directly from your IP address or issue you a temporary domain name. That way you can be developing your site without a domain name or while you're waiting for the propagation to happen. There are some really great tools out there that will give you updates during this propagation process, like what'smydns.net and dnschecker.org. If you put your domain name into the search of these sites, then they're going to tell you which DNS resolvers have picked up your domain name and the IP address that it's using. Now, before we get into our demo, I want to go over just one more thing. When you're setting up your site, you're going to need a hosting service and a registrar to register your domain. It's highly recommended that you keep these two services separate. A hosting provider will offer domain registration services, but it's not their main gig. Some hosting providers will give you a free domain name when you sign up for a hosting account. As nice as that sounds, if you ever have a bad breakup with your hosting service and get a new one, going back to the original hosting service to manage your domain name can feel a little bit like asking your ex to get your favorite sweater back. If you move to a new hosting service, then you can continue to use the old hosting service as your domain registrar, or you can get your domain name moved somewhere else, but then you have to pay a fee and it's a pain to do the transfer. It's much better to register your domain name with a dedicated domain registrar because that's what they specialize in. Also, you have the freedom to move your hosting service without having to mess with the domain. All you need to do is update your domain's server IP address with your domain registrar. And on the other side, so much goes into being a reliable hosting service that has to do with your site's performance, management, and connectivity that I would not trust hosting with a domain registrar. Before we jump into our demo, I just wanted to make a quick note here that when you are registering your domain name, that you get the privacy on that domain name. This is going to hide your personal information from the internet. Otherwise, you're going to have your home address, your phone number, and your email just out on the internet. Some domain registrars will give you this for free, while others will offer this as an additional charge. Because I feel like this is a necessary component to your domain registration, I'm going to recommend services that include this for free. So with that, let's get to our demo. Now I'm going to be doing a demonstration with a domain registrar called Namecheap.com. They're the second largest domain registrar in the world. Their prices are affordable and they include the privacy for free, which I think is a great bonus. Now, when you go through the process of registering your domain name, you're going to need to find an unclaimed domain name first. And you can easily do this within the search bar. So if I wanted to find a domain like catsloveus.com, then I can search that. It's going to go through and find whether or not that domain name has been taken. You can see that Cats Love Us, surprisingly, has been taken, but it does give us some alternative domains. If we wanted a .org or a .net or a .us, it gives us some alternative options. So if I wanted to add something else in there, and then I can say, oh, catsloveusnow.com is $11.28 a year. And if I go over here to add to cart and I go to checkout, you're going to see here that I'm going to get this for $11.28 for the first year. After the first year, it's going to renew at around $15. But then this is the big thing. It includes the domain privacy by default there, which is fantastic. So if I check out, then I just put in my information and this is now my domain name. I have actually registered a domain name with Namecheap. If we head over to my dashboard here, you can see the domain name right here, cuethepast.com. And I'm going to show you how to connect this domain name with a hosting service so that when people type in that domain name into a browser, they're going to get the right IP address of your hosting service. In this demo, I'm going to be using Scala Hosting and their server-side software called sPanel. So I'm going to head over to Scala Hosting's sPanel. This is the admin interface for sPanel. You can see the different accounts that we've set up for our different websites for WordPress, Moodle, and Joomla that we've done in a previous video. We're going to need to get some information from this admin interface and add that to our domain name settings in our registrar dashboard. To find that information, we need to go under this menu item right here, server information. The two bits of information that we need is the name server 1 and name server 2. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this first one, this name server 1, go back over to my dashboard for my domain registrar and go over here and click on manage for our domain. And then right here under name servers, I need to go over here and say custom DNS and add in the number 1 name server, come back here, copy this here, and add that there. So once that's done, I'm going to click on the green checkbox and save that. Now that we've added our name servers to our domain inside of our domain registrar's dashboard, I'm going to do a quick check on the propagation of our domain in whatsmydns.net. So I'm going to paste in here our domain name, and there's several different record types that we can check. The one that we want is A, and I'm going to click search. And so this gives us an idea of our propagation of our domain name, and you can see that it's been propagated out worldwide because I registered this domain name over 24 hours ago, and it's propagated that out. The issue is that I don't recognize this IP address because when I go over here to my hosting, this is my actual IP address right here, and that doesn't actually match this IP address. So if I go ahead and copy this and go over to a website called whois.com, and I'm going to paste in that IP address here, this is going to give me all the information about this IP address. You can see here that our IP address that our domain is pointing to is going to the Namecheap servers. And that's because when you create a domain name, typically the domain registrar is going to point that domain back to itself by default. We did make changes to our name server, but we're not going to see those new changes until they're propagated out for another 24 to 48 hours. Now, while we're waiting, I do need to go back into Scala Hosting and properly route the domain name so that it's going to the correct account inside of sPanel. So to do this, I'm going to go here into our server, and go into our manage accounts. Now these are all the different accounts inside of sPanel that we've installed our different applications. We have one for Joomla, WordPress, and Moodle. So I'm just going to go to our Joomla one here, and I'm going to click here and manage. Inside our sPanel dashboard, you can see over here on the right-hand side that we are using a temporary domain. This is the temporary domain that we're using because we don't have an actual domain that is pointing to this account inside of sPanel. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to Domains. Under Domains, you can see I have our default domain name right here, and that's being routed to our Joomla directory on our server. I have a couple of different options. I can go here and click on Switch Domain, and I can add in our domain name that we just registered right here, and that will switch that out. Or I can come up here and add in our domain name here. And it's going to ask me where the document root should be. If I go over here and click on Browse, then I can go to the public HTML folder and find our Joomla directory. Now this is going to give me the option to select a PHP version that will be used for this domain, and it will inherit all of the default PHP settings. If you remember, we went through and set custom PHP settings for each of our open source apps that we installed. All of the PHP settings are attached to a specific domain. So when we made all of our customizations, we were actually making them to our temporary domain name. If we create a new domain, then we're not going to be inheriting any of those customizations. But if we switch our temporary domain to our real domain, then we're going to keep all of those settings. So I'm actually going to add this domain here, and you can see that's been added right there. Now, obviously, the best thing to do is to switch the domain so I get all of those PHP settings, but I created this so that I could show you what it looks like in the PHP management interface. So I'm going to head back to home here and go down to my PHP manager. And you can see this one right here is where we've been making all of our customizations to. Once we create a new domain, it creates a new line here, and it gives me the ability to change the PHP version, edit things in the PHP INI editor, and make all of the customizations that we need. Now, I'm not actually going to copy over all of the PHP settings from our temporary URL to our main URL, because why do that when I can switch it? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and then switch this to our main URL. If you want information about how to set up the PHP settings for your open source apps that we did a demo on, then go to openappguide.com and check out that training. I did just want to highlight here that having the ability to adjust the PHP settings for each domain name and application allows us to install multiple apps on the same account in our sPanel admin interface. This is going to be great, especially if you're going to be using subdomains to host other open source apps. Maybe you have a dedicated support ticket system, or you could be hosting a documentation wiki, and it could be located at docs.cuethepast.com. So to delete this, I'm going to go over to home, and then I'm going to go back into our domains. And I'm going to go over to our menu here and click delete. Say yes. Now that that's been deleted, I'm going to go over here to switch domain, and I'm going to put cuethepast.com here. And I'm going to say switch. Now with that switch, you can see there's a little star there that says this is the main domain. And if I go back to my home and I look over here on the right hand side, you can see that it has cuethepast.com set as the main domain. Now, if I wanted to create subdomains, like have that documentation platform or ticketing system or whatever, then I would go down here to domains and click on subdomains. Because I've set up our main domain, we can set up unlimited amount of subdomains for our website. So if I wanted to create one, I would go over here to add a subdomain, and let's say I want to create docs. And then here, I would need to specify the document root of where that application has been installed, just like we did for Joomla. So let's go ahead and I'm going to just add in a dummy one here, docs, and this is going to inherit the PHP 8.1 defaults. So I'm going to click add domain. Now with that said, if I type into my browser doc.cuethepass.com, it's going to take me to this document root. Of course, this is a fake document root and actually should be pointing into the public HTML, but I haven't installed anything yet. And so when I install a new application, if that be a wiki or Bookstack or whatever open source application that you want to use, you're going to point that document root to that location. Just a quick note here that once you set up your name servers with your domain registrar for your domain, you don't need to do anything else with the domain registrar for any of your subdomains. That's all controlled within your hosting service, specifically in spanel in this interface. And lastly, I want to show you that inside of the PHP manager, all of your subdomains are going to show up there as well. So if you do have a specific application installed and this subdomain is pointing to that root directory, then you can adjust the PHP version and settings right here in the PHP manager. Everything is set up, so the last thing that we need to do is wait our 24 to 48 hours for our domain to get propagated out with the correct IP address. I'm going to pause the video here and we're going to check back in on the propagation status with whatsmydns.com. All right, some time has passed and it's time for me to check the propagation of my domain name. So I'm going to put my domain name in there and I'm going to do a search. And you can see that I have some IP addresses. This is the 165 IP address. If I check in here, yes, that is my IP address, but there are some in here that have that 192. That's that old IP address that's pointing back to cheapnames.com. So I can see that there's been a partial propagation of my domain name, but it hasn't finished completely. And if I do go over in my part of the world, if I put in cuethepass.com, then it's going to load our Joomla site with the template that we installed in some of the demo content. One thing you may have noticed is here on the left-hand side, I'm getting a not secure notice on my URL, and that's because this URL is automatically getting routed to an HTTPS URL, which means that it is expecting that an SSL certificate has been installed on the site. You will need that SSL certificate to make your site secure and be production ready. But don't worry, because Scala Hosting will automatically install an SSL certificate for every domain and subdomain that you create automatically. So inside of our spanel dashboard, I wanted to quickly show you where that SSL certificate lies, and that's right here under Tools. If you click on that, you can see all of our domains and subdomains listed here. We have Cue the Pass, and then we have our subdomain created, and they've issued the free Let's Encrypt SSL certificate on both of those sites, which is great. So if you see that notice initially that says site not secure, it's because it's going through the process of installing that SSL certificate. You can go to this page and check on its status. So after setting up your hosting, installing your applications, registering your domain, and ensuring that you have an SSL certificate installed, that really covers everything that you need to go live with your site.